Hello, fellow journeyers. Today, we're delving into a topic navigating emotional eating to overcome psychological barriers. Join us as we navigate through the complex terrain of our relationship with food, uncovering the psychological barriers that often drive us to eat based on emotions rather than hunger. From stress and boredom to loneliness and anxiety, we'll explore the underlying triggers behind emotional eating and provide practical strategies to help you overcome them. Together, let's embark on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment, reclaiming control over our eating habits and nurturing a healthier relationship with food. Let's navigate through the maze of emotions and emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. We don't always eat just to satisfy physical hunger. Many of us also turn to food for comfort, stress relief, or to reward ourselves. And when we do, we tend to reach for junk food, sweets, and other comforting but unhealthy foods. You might reach for a pint of ice cream when you're feeling down, order a pizza if you're bored or lonely, or swing by the drive-thru after a stressful day at work. Emotional eating is using food to make yourself feel better to fill emotional needs, rather than your stomach. Unfortunately, emotional eating doesn't fix emotional problems. In fact, it usually makes you feel worse. Afterward, not only does the original emotional issue remain, but you also feel guilty for overeating. Occasionally, using food as a pick-me-up, a reward, or to celebrate isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when eating is your primary emotional coping mechanism, when your first impulse is to open the refrigerator whenever you're stressed, upset, angry, lonely, exhausted, or bored, you get stuck in an unhealthy cycle where the real feeling or problem is never addressed. Emotional hunger can't be filled with food. Eating may feel good in the moment, but the feelings that trigger the eating are still there. And you often feel worse than you did before because of the unnecessary calories you just consumed. You beat yourself for messing up and not having more willpower. Compounding the problem, you stop learning healthier ways to deal with your emotions. You have a harder and harder time controlling your weight, and you feel increasingly powerless over both food and your feelings. But no matter how powerless you feel over food and your feelings, it is possible to make a positive change. You can learn healthier ways to deal with your emotions, avoid triggers, conquer cravings, and finally put a stop to emotional eating. The difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. Before you can break free from the cycle of emotional eating, you first need to learn how to distinguish between emotional and physical hunger. This can be trickier than it sounds, especially if you regularly use food to deal with your feelings. Emotional hunger can be powerful, so it's easy to mistake it for physical hunger. But there are clues you can look for to help you tell physical and emotional hunger apart. Emotional hunger comes on suddenly. It hits you in an instant and feels overwhelming and urgent. Physical hunger, on the other hand, comes on more gradually. The urge to eat doesn't feel as dire or demand instant satisfaction unless you haven't eaten for a very long time. Emotional hunger craves specific comfort foods. When you're physically hungry, almost anything sounds good, including healthy stuff like vegetables. But emotional hunger craves junk food or sugary snacks that provide an instant rush. You feel like you need cheesecake or pizza, and nothing else will do. Emotional hunger often leads to mindless eating. Before you know it, you've eaten a whole bag of chips or an entire pint of ice cream without really paying attention or fully enjoying it. When you're eating in response to physical hunger, you're typically more aware of what you're doing. Emotional hunger isn't satisfied once you're full. You keep wanting more and more, often eating until you're uncomfortably stuffed. Physical hunger, on the other hand, doesn't need to be stuffed. You feel satisfied when your stomach is full. Emotional hunger isn't located in the stomach. Rather than a growling belly or a pang in your stomach, you feel your hunger is a craving you can't get out of your head. You're focused on specific textures, tastes, and smells. Emotional hunger often leads to regret, guilt, or shame. When you eat to satisfy physical hunger, you're unlikely to feel guilty or ashamed because you're simply giving your body what it needs. If you feel guilty after you eat, it's likely because you know deep down that you're not eating for nutritional reasons. Identify your emotional eating triggers. The first step in putting a stop to emotional eating is identifying your personal triggers. What situations, places, or feelings make you reach for the comfort of food? Most emotional eating is linked to unpleasant feelings, but it can also be triggered by positive emotions, such as rewarding yourself for achieving a goal or celebrating a holiday or happy event. Common causes of emotional eating. Stress. Ever notice how stress makes you hungry? It's not just in your mind. When stress is chronic, as it so often is in our chaotic, fast-paced world, your body produces high levels of the stress hormone, cortisol. Cortisol triggers cravings for salty, sweet, and fried foods. Foods that give you a burst of energy and pleasure. The more uncontrolled stress in your life, the more likely you are to turn to food for emotional relief. Stuffing emotions. Eating can be a way to temporarily silence or stuff down uncomfortable emotions, including anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, loneliness, resentment, and shame. While you're numbing yourself with food, you can avoid the difficult emotions you'd rather not feel. Boredom or feelings of emptiness. Do you ever eat simply to give yourself something to do, to relieve boredom, or as a way to fill a void in your life? You feel unfulfilled and empty, and food is a way to occupy your mouth and your time. In the moment, it fills you up and distracts you from underlying feelings of purposelessness and dissatisfaction with your life. Childhood habits. Think back to your childhood memories of food. Did your parents reward good behavior with ice cream, take you out for pizza when you got a good report card, or serve you sweets when you were feeling sad? These habits can often carry over into adulthood, or your eating may be driven by nostalgia for cherished memories of grilling burgers in the backyard with your dad or baking and eating cookies with your mom. Social influences. Getting together with other people for a meal is a great way to relieve stress, but it can also lead to overeating. It's easy to overindulge simply because the food is there or because everyone else is eating. You may also overeat in social situations out of nervousness, or perhaps your family or circle of friends encourages you to overeat, and it's easier to go along with the group. Keep an emotional eating diary. You probably recognize yourself in at least a few of the previous descriptions. But even so, you'll want to get even more specific. One of the best ways to identify the patterns behind your emotional eating is to keep track with a food and mood diary. Every time you overeat or feel compelled to reach for your version of comfort food kryptonite, take a moment to figure out what triggered the urge. If you backtrack, you'll usually find an upsetting event that kicked off the emotional eating cycle. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comments section below. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.